I mean, unfortunately, I'm not in Nepal, so I was very excited about watching it on the cinemas, but I could not watch. But I was reading the reviews about the movie, like everybody else. And interestingly, there were like some very good reviews. Like people were, like hailing you as the born filmmaker. And then, somebody wrote that this was a very tasteful movie and everything. But then there were also some reviewers who were not exactly very satisfied with the, filmography and stuff. And so, I mean, as an artist and a Buddhist monk, how do you deal with your successes and your failures? What is your attitude towards those events after you have produced a work of art?
I think one thing I don't know whether I should use the word clever. If there's not so much of intelligence in my being, but if there is a little bit, that is not putting myself into a shoes or a space where especially I'm talking about film. I try to be really aware right from the beginning that this is only for certain people. So success and failure, therefore, is quite, in my context, in my film world, it's sort of safe. I'm not really, it's not ambitious in many ways, especially commercially. I guess when we talk about success and failure, many times we end up, especially when we talk about film, we end up talking about commercially successful, right? I think so. Most of the time, that's how people seem to measure. Since I have consciously decided not to really fall into that zone, I myself, in one way, I'm happy that we have done this. But of course, on the other hand, as somebody who has written and directed, there's never a satisfaction. I watched it the other day, and I can see there's a lot of things that I could have done different.
Which is definitely an interesting perspective. So Rinpoche, say, for example, as you said, and correct me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but I mean, you do not just produce a work of art in order to be, like successful, or like failure or success does not really bother you too much. But I mean, if that doesn't matter, what is your inspiration for producing art? Why do you produce art? Like, what is the place from where it comes for you?
Now, this is a big question, so it might require a little bit of a lengthy answer. I've been thinking about this. Buddhism has a lot of art in it. Actually, the very fact Buddha at times walked bare feet with a begging bowl, all that serene looking, that is an art, because art is some sort of a means to communicate, well, to yourself and to others. Well, let's use this word. In Tibetan, I think the word art is translated as jutsal. It's a kind of an interesting word, because there's a connotation that there's a sense of art being a little bit of a fake and a little bit of a deception going on there. And this is, I think, quite profound, because in order to tell the truth, many times you need to be a little bit fake, and you need to sort of go around a bit. And especially depending on who you are talking to. If you are talking to a kid, you need to really be quite creative. You can't just, shove down all the whatever we adult call truth. You have to, bring toys, music, this and that. And there's a lot of that element in Buddhism. And then I have to say, my family, from both sides, they are quite artistic people now looking back. And I myself, although we are never sure what art really means, but if it is based on skill of communicating, I guess I guess it is in my character. I'm born in the month of June, so therefore I'm, what do they call it, Gemini, and they say that Gemini can even sell an ice cube to an Eskimo. So I guess that sort of sense of trying to convince is in my character, and probably a bit of a hobby, bit of a something that triggers me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the saying, like a Gemini could sell an ice cube to an Eskimo is very apt for you, because as Buddha said that we're all enlightened being anyway, like there's lack of awareness. So we're all Eskimos, and you're selling us ice cubes, which we already know what it is. So I think it does seem very apt. Rinpoche, like every time I talk to you, what fascinates me is, we have a certain idea about what religious people should be like, and then you start talking about things like horoscopes, like astrological signs. You say, like, since I'm a Gemini, like I do this. So you have a very multi-dimensional approach to life. You see life from so many different dimensions. And how do you reconcile between these two personalities, the one of a curious learner that you probably are? I guess I believe you are a curious learner, and on the other hand, you assume this very serious, very grave role of being a guru, a master, a path shower to a lot of people, right? Like, so how do you reconcile between these two roles of being a learner and a teacher?
Again, wow, one after another, big questions. Life, our life is sort of a packaging, isn't it? And there's a new packaging, and then there's an old packaging that we just don't know how to shrug off, so to speak. In the ancient time, I think Buddhism was really packaged as science, as this truth-seeking laboratory, endeavor, whatever path. That's what it was. The truth is the most important. As the, time goes by, Buddhism somehow got packaged into this packaging called religion. And the religion always is associated with morality, code of conduct. So yes, I have been asked many questions. I've been asked many times, oh, you as a Buddhist practitioner and even some sort of a teacher, how do you sort of make film? This is, to me, many times, it's a little strange question. It's almost equal to somebody asking you, hey, aren't you Buddhist? Why do you type? Doesn't it sort of conflict? Not really, because film, if it is done properly, it can, it is a language, it is a tool, and with the right motivation and the right skill, you could do a lot of good things with a film. Image is so powerful. And then, of course, the editing and the sound, and it has so much impact, isn't it? So reconciling between these two life, philosophically, psychologically, I don't have any issue. But of course, as I said, the society somehow thinks like this. And I guess it's going to take some time to, what do you call it? The society to change this kind of thinking, because, practitioner, Buddhist should be understood as a truth seeker, just as I don't know, MIT student who is there to learn science.
Mm-hmm. That's very well said. I mean, I'm asking you these questions because, as film especially, it's not a solitary art. It's not really like producing a piece of music like Beethoven or Mozart, or like doing a painting like Henri Matisse or Monet or Renoir, right? Like this is a team effort, right? Like you're working, and also you're working with some of the best cinematographers like Mark Lee Ping Bing, right? Like, so you are working with the professionals in these movies, and it's a team effort. So, you are a guru where you are used to giving people advices, like this is how you do things. And suddenly you're in a team where there are like new technologies, like disruptive new digital technologies, and you don't know about them. I'm assuming maybe sometimes you don't know about them and somebody corrects you, Rinpoche, this is not how you do it, like you do it like this. I mean, do you have reality check? Does your ego get a little bit hurt in those situations, or do you look at these things playfully and not really take your position of being a guru too seriously?
Okay, I should tell you, film director can be a tyrant too. Sometimes film director can be actually equally, if not more, a dictator. But one thing, this is something that a lot of people seem to not understand. To be a dictator is difficult. People should try one day. You really need to learn how to lure people. You need to sell your ideas. You can't just go on and, I guess you can try shooting gun and, like terrorizing people, but in order to reach there and maintain that position, that is altogether an art, So yes, there's always a reality check. Yes, you can say the dictators sometimes do reality check with the fear and paranoia and anxiety and all of that. But you are talking about working with a professional. Yes, I have to say, I have learned a lot. This is, my photographer, the editor, in the past also, really good photographer, editor, production designers. I have learned a lot from them. But I think I want to say to young filmmaker, aspiring filmmaker, that sometimes maybe it is also, I think you have to have the courage to really just do what you think is good idea, not really bog down and constrict yourself with something called professionalism. And especially because that sort of, I don't know, the feeling of in awe with so-called professionalism could maybe derail your artistic expression.
Mm-hmm. Rinpoche, earlier in this conversation, you talked about the concept of art as it is perceived in Tibetan scriptures or Tibetan community, which is basically a layer of deception which can help you see the truth beyond, if I understood it correctly. So let's talk about your recent movie, Dakini. If Dakini as a movie, there is I'm recalling this poem by this statement by this poet called Adrienne Rich, where she says, if words are veils, like something that hides, if words are veils, what are they hiding? So I'm also always very fascinated by the medium that artists deploy, because they are definitely trying to give something more than their medium, either through language or visual, right? Like, so in a similar fashion, what was the truth, or what was the idea that you were trying to sell through the deception of this movie Dakini?
Okay. The whole phenomena of Dakini is something very related to so-called Tantric Buddhism. Well, I should say, I mean, there is the whole Indian subcontinent, and of course, Nepal. There's a, other Tantric tradition. So there's that. Then, Nepal, blatantly, there's so many tantric stuff going on. And then there's also a lot of generalized sort of notion of Dakini as a deity, as a very pleasing woman, as a very, ferocious woman, as I don't know, another beyond worldly being. Well, in Tantric Buddhism, ultimately, Tantric Buddhism has a different idea about Dakini. And in the midst of all these symbolic Dakini, sometimes we lose, sort of in touch with this, what Tantra is trying to talk about. So I guess I have a little bit of an attempt to really express that. Of course, it's all interwoven with folklore, superstition, mythology, philosophy, which is what makes it beautiful, actually. It should be like that. It should never, it cannot be expressed raw, naked, and, like obvious. I guess you can, to somebody who can really chew, who can really swallow, who can really appreciate, and who can really see it. But for those who can't, you have to you have to weave all these. But the danger is always the symbolism, mythology, stories, they tend to hijack a lot of times the real meaning of not just Dakini, Buddha even, or the Dharma. And I thought, even to, what do you call it, arouse a little bit of a curiosity is worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Rinpoche, like this concept of Dakini, and pardon me, I'm a lay person. I don't really know what the term entails, but we live in a world where the concept of femininity or masculinity are becoming volatile. We're contesting what it means to be a woman or feminine, or like what is the idea of an empowered femininity in our times. So when I heard the name of the movie, Searching for a Lady with Fangs and Mustache, I was struck by this this amorphous nature of the title, right? Like, so a feminine is not just a feminine; she's also the masculine, whatever mustache could signify, or she's also feral, like a monster, like a witch or whatever. So in the world that we live today, the concepts, the way we perceive the world is very binary, either good or bad, either masculine or feminine, or black and white. So as a philosophical tradition, I'm speaking about Buddhism, which encourages us to see the world in a spectrum and not just binaries, negative and positive, but through the spectrum, the 7 colors that fall in between. Do you find sometimes it difficult to get your message across what you're trying to say because our framework is so binary, the way we see the world is so binary? And is there a reason why you chose this title for this movie?
No, this is a very important again. And probably this is one uphill battle that we have to fight. I think especially after colonial influence, really, and by the way, colonialism, as a lot of people, intellectuals say, it's not really finished, it's actually prevailing. I think, this is really important, people know, like Indian wisdom or the Chinese wisdom really don't have too much of this black and white, bad and good, Okay, I'm generalizing a lot, okay? Whereas the colonial culture has a lot of that, black and white. Therefore, it has an influence, like either you are with us or with them, that kind of thing. In India or in, I think, the ancient China, we don't seem to have that. I was just reading other day, a few months ago, like Confucius in China. There's this statement, it says, well, there's no point of there's no point of worrying because everything is out of control. Now, what do you think if our kids from a very young time, even if they recite this, it will have some sort of a, influence in our, there's no point of worrying because everything is out of control. That's kind of a, important message. Now we don't hear like that. Oh, you have to worry. You can do it. It's in your hand. You are the boss. You can do it. That kind of culture. But anyway, so let's use the word dakini. In many, in some sense, actually, this is an important one. Dakini is actually a derogatory term. It's really, it's something that you use only when you are really unhappy. Now, you see, this is the thing, in the Tantric Buddhism, everything that's considered not good and bad and lowly and, unwholesome is wholesome. This is, I'm trying to put this into, what do you call it, the film also. There's a part where our, characters, they have this situation where they have to go and see a master. And instead of me calling the master of a tantric lineage, I used a classic term, which is the master of left hand lineage. Many times Tantra is called left hand lineage. And the reason is, in the societies, in many societies, I think, left hand is considered lower. It's like, I don't know, inappropriate. But Tantra, seeing that, deliberately try to break through this. There's a lots and lots of this. And then, yes, as you very appropriately put it, the masculine and feminine sort of the blurriness, the dakini with the mustache and the fang, the masculine character applied on feminine base, so to speak. There's a lot of this in the Tantra, but all these a kind of people, all this kind of thing what we are discussing. For intellectuals, maybe this is intellectually stimulating and, satisfying. But in our day-to-day life, it's kind of useless, right? In the day-to-day life, it's better to have, this is wrong, this is right, this is good, this is bad. But what I think the Buddhists are saying is, okay, you can do that, but don't forget, there is no such thing as really bad. There is no such thing as a really good. As long as you have this in your head, then what it does is it will liberate you from being so obsessed with this is the only way, my way is the only way, this system is the only way that works not only for me, not only for you, but for the whole world. So this kind of sort of, what do you call it? Crusade kind of mind. You understand? Like what do you call it? They're out there need to be educated. Mind is lesser, I think. Okay. You ask all these very difficult questions. I mean, quite tough questions. So I don't know whether I'm making it clear. Maybe anyway, please.
No, you're doing a good job of selling ice cubes. No, but also I think the blame is on you because I told your disciples that I probably am not a good interviewer because I'm not a Buddhist. I don't believe in enlightenment so much, but I'm told that fools like me could be the right medium to ask questions. So you chose this for yourself.
Okay.
And Rinpoche, what you just said about the nature of crusade mind, this mind about them versus us. I have a question that just popped up in my mind. And if this is inappropriate and you would like to skip, just let me know. I don't want to push it. But this just reminds me of a recent Dalai Lama case where, there was a small footage. And I see this because I find it quite interesting. I mean, we live in an age where the entire content could be sliced down to 9 seconds Facebook reels, and people only have that attention span or that kind of time or attention to indulge in content, right? So we live in an age where the contents are bite-sized and people make a judgment being based on a small slice, maybe one frame of picture instead of the entire movie, probably. I don't know. But in this entire Dalai Lama case, I as a neutral person, I like Dalai Lama because of this quote he said, and it's my favorite quote, where Dalai Lama said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." And it's my favorite quote. I like Dalai Lama, but I'm also not his disciple. So when this entire Dalai Lama scandal kind of like broke out, I saw that there were people, especially I'm in the West right now, I'm in the US, right? Like, so people have very rigid ideas about like what is right and what is wrong, like what are the sexual activities and what are not. And on the other hand, like the Buddhist community was also quite agitated. They wanted to teach, oh, this was the tradition in the Tibetan ritual or whatever. So somehow I have a feeling that just by, getting I'm sorry if I'm offending any community. That's not my intention. I'm just trying to understand human mind, including mine. Okay, I'm also like that. But I feel like just because I wear a certain kind of cloth, I wear a Buddhist robe and somebody wears a robe of a feminist activist, we don't become different. It takes a lot to change mind. We all have crusaders' mind. Do you think that is right assessment, or is that a right analysis? Or you want to skip the question?
No. What's the relationship between the crusader mind and all of this?
So I felt like, Dalai Lama was attacked by the Western media, if I can say so, or people with certain kind of Western belief. But the Buddhists, they also attacked a lot of so on social media, there was a campaign, they're like, oh, they were defending Dalai Lama so bad. And I was sitting there and thinking, does Dalai Lama really need someone's defense? I mean, if he's enlightened, he's Bodhisattva, he is the incarnation of God itself. Is it necessary that, the disciples defend him? And by the way, Rinpoche, this reminds me of Oscar Wilde quote. I love Oscar Wilde. I think you will also love him if you read him. And then there is this one quote by Oscar Wilde where he says, if 3 people start agreeing with me, I feel I must have been wrong. So what is this business with getting a lot of followers defending you? Does Dalai Lama need anyone's defending? I don't know if he's God or not, but if he's a God, do we need to defend him? As a disciple, what is the discipline? I mean, not to slip into this crusading mind.
Okay, it's like this. I think this one really requires a proper answering. But I feel that on the both sides of the, equation, at this point, people are not ready to really hear a true, conversation. I'm not saying that I have the answer to this, but I think we need to really, really be aware of the power of social media. You can't just always conveniently use it when it works for you, and then sort of protest when it doesn't work for you also, So I think from all sides, we need to be really aware. And then I myself live in a world where I have a small following, few hundreds maybe. Even within the few hundreds, the opinion varies. There are some really passionate people who are in agreement with what I do or what I say. And there are people who are, totally against it. I think we, especially people who are in kind of a position where you are like a public figure, or you are a teacher, or supposedly an influencer, we just need to realize that we have to now live with this kind of a world. So, but as I said, I have my own reading on this, but at the moment, I think maybe both sides is not really ready to sort of digest or have a proper conversations. So maybe another time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I have I ask you this question because I went through your Facebook page, of course, speaking of social media. I mean, I went to your Facebook page and I was just scrolling through some of the things that you are sharing. So, like you said, now this is social media has become a means. I mean, the gurus were the original influencers, right? Like now we have social media influencers who are selling soaps and shampoos and whatnot, but earlier the prototype is based on gurus, right? Like who were selling a lot of things to us. So as the original influencers, how are you coping with this new medium, like where there are like everybody can be an influencer? You are giving this message. So maybe like certain 100 years ago in Tibet, there was one guru, there was Potala Palace maybe, and then like the attention was channelized or centralized towards one point, and people could be attentive to that point. But now we have 360-degree angle where there are like 10,000 different kinds of influencers, and everybody is trying to sell all kinds of things. Somebody's trying to sell excitement, somebody's trying to sell peace, somebody's trying to sell I don't know, whatever, somebody's trying to sell wisdom. So in this world of selling constantly, how do you see yourself as a master, as a Buddhist master? Like, how are you coping with it, or are you enjoying it?
Before our interview, you tell me that I'm enlightened, right? And this is a good chance that I want to clarify. The very reason why I'm not enlightened, there are many reasons. The one reason I can give you is I do really care about my skin. not necessarily, this materialistic skin, but in the, metaphorically, I have to save my skin. I'm always paranoid about, how people will look at me, how people will see me. I have to say this. Now, the reason why I never had a Facebook before, but then people tell me, hey, that was such a good photo. That was such a good teaching on your Facebook. That's what they say. This is like 10, 15 years ago, before, when Facebook phenomena was just, starting. So I was thinking about, I never had one. What do you mean? So then actually I went through the Facebooks, and then I saw actually there's few that's supposedly me. Now, and these Facebooks, they were all, I later realized, they were actually kindly and with a good intention started by so-called my fan or devotees or people who are, okay, on my side. But the problem with this Facebook is they all have my image that's like so serene and like a godlike on the throne, speaking always the proper nice things. Now, this really made me paranoid because how long can I hold on pretending that? So then, because I need to really sort of give the real picture, not completely. Of course, I'm never going to give everybody complete my picture. Of course, I'm I told you, not enlightened. Therefore, I care about my, I don't know, just image, etc., etc. But I also I don't want people to raise some like found, expectations and assumptions, especially as these really good, serene, moralistic, So this is why I had my so-called my own Facebook that I actually, I'm not that diligent, but I do sometimes, and sometimes I do use it to announce, schedules or whatever, but also sometimes a disclaimer. And I guess you can say I also have this strange, I don't know, addiction to, stir people a little bit, especially so-called my liberal friends. So sometimes I like to tease them a bit. Not just teasing, actually. Sometimes I mean it. A lot of things that what I've said there, I actually meant it. And yes, that's it.
Well, now speaking of the entire, guru business itself, Rinpoche, I read somewhere that, the medicines, the pharmaceuticals, they have to keep on revising the trade name for certain medicines because they stop working on people. If you keep on selling people paracetamol for like 200, 300 years, they lose their relevance. So you'll have to give it a new name, like, I don't know, Tylenol, whatever. So, people keep on thinking that, oh, there is a potency. So Buddhism is, people take pride in this fact that it's like thousands of years old. Like Buddhism is thousands of years old of living a life certain way, like certain bodily and mental discipline to attain maybe certain kind of truth. But is that truth what Buddha sought more than 2,500 years ago? Is that truth still relevant to our life? Or has it become, like whenever we open some kind of organization, say, for example, multinational organization, now the organization itself becomes an organism, right? Like the self-preservation becomes a primary instinct. So everybody wants to survive, whether there is relevance to that institution or not. Everybody, now there are so many people who are employed, even the US prison system, they don't want to demolish because there's so many people are, attached to the whole prison system. So I'm not comparing these two institutions together, of course, but is there inherent relevance to Buddhism as a religious or spiritual institution that modern man could still benefit from, or has it become more a ritualistic, self-propagating institution? If you want to do an honest analysis.
Okay, very important question. The truth that Buddha taught, especially, the truth that Buddha taught, such as the Four Noble Truths, or the three characters, or the four seals, they are basically the reality, the fact, the truth of the life phenomena, etc., etc. It's like water is wet, fire is hot. That's the truth. And I mean, it's not a question about, is it relevant for us to know that water is wet and fire is hot? I guess it is relevant because, if you want to wet your throat, then you need to know that water is wet, so on and so forth, right? It's like this.
Fire into your mouth when you were thirsty.
Yes. Now, how this, and so that I don't think we can ever change. I mean, that's truth. That's just truth. But how this is taught, definitely, it's not a matter of we need to change. It has already changed, even from the time of the Buddha. He was already teaching to different people. He taught using different language, different analogy, and different, I don't know, it went off. Okay. Different, I don't know, phrase, language, presentation, even the way his outfit. Okay, on the most common understanding of Buddhism, he appears to be like this ascetic, begging bowl, bare feet, all of that. But in the Tantric Buddhism, he has earrings, crown, and he also his color even has changed to something bluish, so on and so forth. And not just that, in some Tantra, he appears to be a woman. So that kind of method has already changed. But, the thing is, we are so attached and so stuck with a certain way of thinking. And human beings, what do they say? Old habit dies very hard, or something like that. Yeah, it's very much there. And I thought that is only relevant with Tibetans, or I don't know, the Nepali, but I realized it's not. I'm discovering that old habit, die hard, very much applies with the Europeans and Americans, and I think,
and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Rinpoche, so Buddha said, and I don't understand the depth of the word that I'm quoting, but Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering in the world. At least I know this truth. The rest three, I don't really know so much. Like, at least I know the first truth, that there is suffering in this world. But there was also this Buddhist quote. I don't know, it was attributed to Buddha, and I heard it from Osho, and Osho said he loved this quote a lot by Buddha. The quote was, "This very earth, this very body, the Buddha, this very earth, the lotus paradise." So there are two ways of looking into this world attributed to Buddha. The one is the way of looking into the world as the genesis of suffering, and the other is looking at your own body as the temple of Buddhahood, and the world as the lotus paradise, right? So how can a modern man benefit from either of these thoughts and ideas? And how can they diminish suffering in their life, or see that vision of this world as the lotus paradise? How can we access that lotus paradise and the Buddha within ourselves for a modern man?
Okay. Now, we need to be kind of careful here about language. Actually, the word suffering more and more I realize this is not the word, the appropriate word for word dukkha. Because the suffering sounds like pain and, the misery and really, like down. The word dukkha is not necessarily like that.
Rinpoche, your voice is fluctuating.
I was just saying that we have to be kind of careful with the language, because the word suffering is very painful, negative, you understand? Like down, I don't know, pain, misery, so on and so forth. But the word dukkha is not necessarily like that. In fact, okay, but the word dukkha at best can be translated as something like, if I try my best, something like that nothing can satisfy you 100%. That's kind of important, So I think that when we present, when Buddhists present, the truth of suffering, we need to be really careful. We need to explain this a little bit. Because from the Buddhist point of view, of course, headache is the suffering, of course. But having a nice ice cream and having that joy is also dukkha. Because it has a consequences, especially if you are supposed to watch diet, whatever, sugar or whatever, stuff like that, right? So basically, nothing can satisfy you 100%. And that is quite a profound truth, that if modern people realize nothing can satisfy you 100%, I am very sure it will influence the way we shop, way we travel, way we put our target in our life. It's a very important.
That sounds like, yeah, I feel good just listening to you explain that. It just definitely transmits that energy. And besides Rinpoche, I don't really know how long our conversation is supposed to be. So anybody in the technical team, if you could give me a heads up, I would take that to note. Otherwise, I can just go on. I have several questions. So please just let me know what is the time frame. Rinpoche, when you talk about, say, what does Buddhism do to you? Like, what is the gift of Buddhism to an atheist like me? Like, not an atheist. I'm not so sure. Also, maybe an agnostic like me. And what is it that Buddhism gives? Or it, yeah.
Very good question. It sounds really pathetic, but I watched this movie called Blade Runner. Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And then there's a second sequel. There's a sequel.
I haven't watched the sequel.
Yeah, it's both good. Actually, both are really good. But anyway, the movie is quite powerful because it really questions meaning of our existence, or if you like the word purpose. Am I just like an espresso machine and then that's it? Now, if not for Buddhism, I have to say this is why it's so pathetic. I should say, Buddhism is great, this, that, all the, like the light and the sensations and all of that. But I don't think it will help, especially our younger people, if you hear this, because that's just your feeling, that's just your sort of imagination, probably just your experience. Even if I say, oh yeah, Buddhism is great because just this morning I saw 100 Buddha appearing from my window, all that, I can say whatever and doesn't matter. But when I watch that film, even after all that, it really hits me. Existentialist angst, right? Wow. And I have to say, it's thanks to Buddhism, the whole package, that I feel, I don't know, meaning is, the meaning of life, purpose of life. This word meaning and the purpose is so shallow, actually. But having heard the Buddhist teachings, I feel not hopeless. I feel very, and I can, even appreciate a very simple poetry by somebody like Basho, who wrote a frog jumping on a pond and then there's a splash. Now there's the meaning of life. Fantastic, right? So, but not just on that level. That's, I think, in a very shallow level, I would say. But time, beginning, end, all this just a concept. And sometimes we are so, our hope and our fear is very much triggered by some strange concept. And all this information, I got it from Buddhism. So if you ask me, am I like fearless about death? No, of course. I would still like to have, I have plans, I still want my plans to be fulfilled, or when I reach these plans. But that bombardment of information about time and space and how they are relative and how they are just an illusion, I think it really has made me not feel hopeless. And I think that's important.
Absolutely. And besides, for those of our friends who are probably listening to this, if you have any questions, you could probably post it in the chat box, and I could try to relay your question. But having said that, Rinpoche, have you watched this Netflix show called Beef?
No, I'm actually watching Harry and Meghan.
Oh. And how are you liking it?
Of course, it's really painful to watch, just because it's not really, story-wise or stimulating, it's not really. But I'm watching it because for some other purpose. I'm watching it, how even British and American, how they have conflict. And that is such an interesting subject for me. If British people feel that they are now being colonized by American values, the British should really feel sympathetic to the whole world, right? So that's what I'm, this is why I'm diligently watching this Harry and Meghan thing.
Rinpoche, I think you will really enjoy this show, Beef.
How do you spell it?
It's Beef, B-E-E-F, Beef.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I feel like, what you just talked about, right? Like, what is the inherent truth of the world is that there is nothing in this world that could satisfy you. So this insatiable nature of desire, and can anybody really reach to the point where they can call themselves happy or not? So this show kind of like deals with that idea, but in a very crude American way. And it begins from a road race and a small like social media reel. So like as I was watching that show, I was thinking, like, if I could share that with you. Rinpoche, today I wanted to explore your personality. I mean, people have known you as a guru and the monk and everything. Today I wanted to explore your personality as an artist. Like, were you a born filmmaker, as New York Times, I think, called you, and as a Tibetan monk, I think you can take this born filmmaker to a whole new level with your incarnation business. So were you a born filmmaker, or is this a craft that you practiced over the period of time? How did the journey as a cinema maker start for you?
I think it started quite late.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in year 1961. So people should know that even in my 20s, a chance to watch anything that is moving picture is still very, very scarce. It's not like these days you can just look at iPad, iPhone, Netflix, so on and so forth. Plus, I was raised very kind of traditionally, really, really under strict traditional training. So, I mean, even learning English was very much, monitored or cautious. There was a lot of caution. I mean, forget movies. But it was so much later, like in my late 20s, I think, or mid 20s, when I was beginning to expose, when I discover films by all kinds of films, okay, James Bond, I don't know, Dallas, the television episode. I'm sure you guys haven't even heard the names because you guys are all like kids on this. Then also I encounter great films by people like Satyajit Ray, Victorio De Sica, Ozu. Ozu, wow, he is still, he's so good that he makes me depressed.
Yeah, totally. Rinpoche, I mean, there's a question. I think now I have more or less come to the end of 1 hour time frame that I had designated. But I'm told that since you are the master after all, no matter how much you deny it, you have the authority to dissolve this meeting. So whenever you are bored, I guess you can take the cue and say, like, okay, I'm done with this interview and I'll have to abide by that. But having said that, I have received a question from one of the audiences who is appropriately named Seth Paradox. So he or she asks the question: when we reside in this unsatisfactory world, what is the value of sharing with our fellows? In addition to that, nothing satisfies 100% notion. If nothing is satisfactory, what is the point of charity? I think this is what I understand from the question. What is the point of being kind?
Because it immediately liberates you from this delusion that something would satisfy you 100%. That's so good, isn't it? I'm not saying that people should stop shopping, or people should doing I don't know, do whatever they're doing. They should continue, but they should just keep this reality that it's not going to fulfill your desire 100%. I think that is so good for even a good sleep. It's good for parenting, it's good for leaders, it's good for business management. I mean, holiday planning. Let's say we plan to go to Goa, lifelong dream to, I don't know, drink some coconut juice or something. But then you have all these ideas, and then you go there and you find, then you will have Goa syndrome the rest of the life, and that's sad.
Exactly. Rinpoche, I think more or less, I think I should come, like, try to wrap up this interview because,
Okay.
yeah, I think I've come to the end of 1 hour designated time. But I wanted to ask you, last time we had a conversation at Bodhi Television, we talked a little bit about Lichavi House and you were very excited about it. And I know now that it has opened and there are people and you had expectations and hopes from it. So what are your thoughts about Lichavi House now? How is it going?
So far, with so much dedication, hard work from the team, it has been doing really well. I really want young, local youth to really take full advantage of this, get involved, and not just the local, people from all over the world. My personal hope is that we will uphold and appreciate the truth that Buddha taught, but we will do it through hopefully different means, expressing art, music, whatever. So I really want to, appeal young people from all over the world to really please get involved.
Rinpoche, have I missed anything that, like, of course I've missed a lot. I mean, you read literally and metaphorically, but have I missed anything significant here that you think needs to be addressed in this meeting?
I think you have asked so many questions and some of these questions really required long conversations, and I'm sure we will have a chance to meet again. So I think.
But Rinpoche, if you're here in California, I'm here in California. I'm in the Silicon Valley right now, and I was trying to connect with meditation communities. Not that because I want to be a Buddhist. I still don't want to be a Buddhist. But you know, like how the world is, it's quite crazy. So every once in a while, you need some kind of calmness. So I was trying to look for the communities. And if you're here or if you have centers around this place, I would be willing to join.
Okay.
So this is also a shout out to people in California if there are people around.
And we can continue our conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Rinpoche, last question. What makes you happy these days?
Wow. I think lots of small things. Lots of small things. Like in Nepal. When I hear the temple bell, smell all this mixture of smell, like incense, dog shit, I don't know, whatever. And then the crowds, dog barking, I don't know. I guess it's something to do with the childhood. It takes you there. You feel really, you feel you are being transported. So I guess if you are asking me what makes me happy these days, I think this is it. And I guess that's why I'm here. And I guess I will come back for that. Beside, of course, the holy shrines and my Buddhist friends and all that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Rinpoche.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye, Rinpoche. I think I